The night was alive with anticipation. The annual end-of-year party at Roosevelt High School was the event everyone had been waiting for. The gymnasium had been transformed into a dazzling wonderland of twinkling fairy lights, metallic streamers, and balloons floating like colorful orbs beneath the high ceiling. A DJ booth pulsed with the latest hits, sending vibrations through the wooden floor as students lost themselves in the euphoria of the night. Sarah Matheson, a senior about to graduate, was among the revelers. She had spent hours getting ready with her friends, trading makeup tips and trying on different outfits until they found the perfect ones. Now, she danced with carefree abandon, her worries about the future melting away with each beat of the music. The night was perfect, almost too perfect. As the night wore on, the crowd began to thin out. Some students left early, eager to continue the party elsewhere, or simply too tired to dance any longer. Sarah and her closest friends, however, were determined to make the most of every last moment. They laughed, took pictures, and shared secrets as they danced the night away. It was nearing midnight when something strange began to happen. Sarah noticed at first a sudden chill in the air, as though a cold draft had seeped into the room. She rubbed her bare arms, puzzled by the drop in temperature. The gym, which had been warm and filled with the heat of bodies moving to the rhythm, now felt strangely cold, almost oppressive. Did someone turn on the AC? Sarah asked her friend Jenna, who was busy adjusting her hair in the reflection of a nearby window. Jenna shook her head, frowning. No, I don't think so. Maybe they just opened a door or something. But Sarah wasn't convinced. There was something off about the air, a thickness, a heaviness that seemed to settle over the room like a blanket. She glanced around, noticing that others were beginning to feel it too. The music, which had been loud and vibrant, suddenly seemed distant, as though it were playing from far away. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. The twinkling fairy lights strung across the ceiling dimmed, and the overhead fluorescents buzzed ominously before going out altogether, plunging the gym into near darkness. The only illumination came from the emergency exit signs, casting an eerie red glow over the room. A collective gasp went up from the remaining students, and for a moment, everything was still. Then, the gym doors slammed shut with a loud, echoing bang, causing a ripple of panic to spread through the crowd. Sarah's heart began to race as she realized that something was very wrong. Maybe it's just a power outage, Jenna said, trying to sound calm, but her voice wavered. Let's just find Mr. Thompson. He'll know what to do. Sarah nodded, grateful for the suggestion. The school's janitor, Mr. Thompson, was known for his no-nonsense attitude and ability to fix just about anything. He was probably somewhere nearby, ready to handle whatever had gone wrong. But as Sarah and Jenna made their way through the darkened gym, they quickly realized that finding Mr. Thompson wasn't going to be easy. The fog had started to seep in, thin tendrils of mist curling under the doors and windows, winding their way around the students' feet. It was almost imperceptible at first, but within minutes, the fog had thickened, filling the room with a dense, white haze. Where did this come from? Jenna asked, her voice trembling. This is so weird. Sarah didn't answer. She was too focused on trying to see through the fog, which was now so thick that she could barely make out the shapes of the other students around her. The mist seemed to move with a will of its own, swirling and shifting as though it were alive. Suddenly, the music stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of footsteps, soft, shuffling footsteps that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Sarah's pulse quickened as she realized that the other students were no longer beside her. She was alone, surrounded by nothing but the fog and the distant echoes of footsteps. Jenna, she called out, her voice shaking. Jenna, where are you? There was no response. Panic began to set in as Sarah stumbled through the fog, searching for any sign of her friends. The gym, which had once been familiar and safe, now felt like a labyrinth, its walls stretching into the void. Every direction she turned seemed to lead her deeper into the mist, and the footsteps grew louder, more insistent. As she wandered aimlessly, Sarah began to notice something strange. The fog was not just obscuring her vision, it was distorting it. Shapes began to emerge from the haze, figures that were half-formed, flickering in and out of existence like ghosts. At first, Sarah thought they were other students, but as she drew closer, she realized with a growing sense of dread that these figures were not her classmates. They were something else. The first figure she saw was a girl, about her age, with long, dark hair hanging limply over her face. Her clothes were outdated, as if she had stepped out of a different time, and her skin was pale, almost translucent. As Sarah watched, the girl turned to face her, revealing hollow, empty eye sockets and a mouth twisted into a silent scream. Sarah recoiled in horror, but the girl did not move. She simply stood there, her expression frozen in terror, as though she had been caught in her final moments. Then, as quickly as she had appeared, the girl dissolved back into the fog, leaving Sarah shaken and disoriented. But the girl was not the only one. More figures began to emerge from the mist, boys and girls, all around the same age, dressed in the same outdated clothing. Their faces were contorted in expressions of fear and pain, their bodies stiff and unnatural. They moved in jerky, disjointed motions, as though they were being controlled by unseen strings. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized what she was seeing. These were not students, they were the spirits of the dead, trapped in this place, reliving their final moments over and over again. She remembered the stories she had heard, the rumors that had circulated among the students for years, rumors of a terrible fire that had consumed the gym decades ago, trapping everyone inside. The gym had been rebuilt, of course, and the tragedy had faded into local legend. But the spirits of those who had died that night had never left. They had been waiting, bound to this place, and now they were seeking something, someone. Sarah tried to run, but the fog seemed to close in around her, pressing in from all sides. The figures grew more numerous, their faces blending together in a nightmarish blur. She could feel their cold, clammy hands brushing against her skin as they reached out, trying to pull her into their world. Desperation gripped her as she struggled to find an exit, any way out of this nightmare. She could hear the faint whispers of the spirits, their voices overlapping in a haunting chorus, telling the story of that fateful night, the night they had been trapped in the gym, the night they had died in the fire. And then, through the fog, Sarah saw a figure she recognized. It was Jenna, her best friend, standing a few feet away, her face pale and frightened. Relief flooded through Sarah as she called out to her, but Jenna didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at Sarah with wide, vacant eyes. Something was wrong. Jenna's movements were slow, unnatural, and as Sarah drew closer, she realized with horror that Jenna wasn't alone. Behind her, emerging from the fog, were more figures, students from the party, but they were different now. Their eyes were empty, their faces slack and lifeless. They were no longer alive. "Jenna!" Sarah screamed, but it was too late. Jenna turned to face her, and Sarah saw that her skin was as pale as the spirits, her eyes hollow and dark. Jenna reached out a hand, but there was no recognition in her gaze, no spark of life. She had become one of them. Terror surged through Sarah as she backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The fog was closing in, and the dead were all around her. She could feel their cold breath on her neck, their fingers brushing against her hair. They were pulling her into the fog, into their world, where there was no escape. But just as Sarah thought she was lost, she felt a sudden warmth like the flicker of a flame in the darkness. She turned, and through the fog, she saw a light. It was faint, barely more than a glow, but it was real, and it was getting closer. The light grew brighter, and as it did, the fog began to recede, the spirits drawing back as though repelled by its warmth. Sarah felt hope surge within her as she ran toward the light, desperate to escape the darkness that had claimed her friends. The light was coming from the far end of the gym, where the doors had been locked. As Sarah reached them, she saw that the light was coming from a small, flickering flame, a candle, held by an old man in a janitor's uniform. "Mr. Thompson," Sarah cried, her voice breaking with relief. The janitor nodded solemnly, his expression grim. "You need to get out of here, now," he said, his voice low and urgent. "This place isn't safe. They're trying to take you,